Hey, this is David Hayter. You may know me as the screenwriter of films like X-Men, X-Men 2, and Watchmen, but you probably know me best as the voice of Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. And you're listening to Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. Kept you waiting, huh?
All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast and the #1 podcast in the Pacific, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I have the true honor and privilege of having the one, the only, the iconic Tara Bruno. Tara, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on as a guest. I know we've been trying to coordinate this for a very long time in both of our schedules. So I'm glad before the end of the year, I get to be on your show.
Hey, it is an honor, again, to have you on the show. And yeah, I've lost. Okay, so my concept of time has just completely gone out the window. If I don't have it in my schedule, I'm like, I don't know what time it is. But like, we literally have been trying to coordinate this for a while. And just for the audience to know, like, Tara's incredibly busy. Incredibly busy. You run Tara Bruno PR, which is super successful. But go ahead, let's have you introduce yourself and plug your outlets and everything about you. And yes, this is the part where I'm gonna shut up and I just want to listen to you talk.
I'm Tara. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. Tara Bruno PR is a baby. It's new. It's not that old. I've been in the industry for a very long time, but I was an independent contractor for a long time. But the network itself, which is a lot of people like me, there are, it's about 3 years old. And so, yeah, this is new territory, for me to work, in, this capacity with this many people. I mean, obviously in my past life, before I was an independent contractor, I worked at a boutique PR agency. So I was one of the vice presidents there in Manhattan. Resigned my position when I had my daughter. Decided to be a stay-at-home mom, and then I started working remotely, and then decided to. I was asked by one of my clients that was using me as an independent contractor. Said, we love the work you do. We like the way you approach things. Build a team. So it started from there.
Wow.
Yeah. So it gave me an opportunity. And I always was sort of on the fence of, do I grow? Do I stay? But I really liked the flexibility of my, making my own hours. And so being independent was always a thing of mine. And when I decided to grow the team, I decided to do it a little bit differently. So I'm not an agency by, I guess, the term agency of what you is. We are all independent contractors. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and, they want to hire me for either a game or for a multitude of games, whether it's developer or publisher, I will then build a team based on their availability, but also on their experience. So if someone specializes in something that I think would be a really natural fit, that's the team that I will sort of build. But independent of Tara Bruno PR, a lot of people on my team, work for other companies or do independent contracting themselves. So it's not just for me. So they have the ability to work on a multitude of things, and obviously as long as it's not a direct competitor or, something that they're working on that's similar, they're free to work in any capacity. So, and we have that flexibility. We make our own hours. We have a lot of fun. I really believe in especially now, like the health and well-being of my team, and to promote really good culture. I think that's really important. And so every so often, just, as an uplifting thing, I will send, a care package to everybody on my team. And I put a lot of thought into those, because I know them. We're a team of 9 with myself included. And so, everything from like, coffee bean subscription to, some bath salts, or, something special that will, make them, feel, I don't know, great for that day, or just for that month, or, just to get something uplifting. So that's really important to me.
Wow. Okay, so here's my question. How come I didn't have you as a boss before? Like, okay, like, when I think back to all the different jobs I've had, like, God, how long has it been? It's been almost 20 years since I graduated from college. But when I graduated from college and I was looking to get into PR, like there's not like a whole lot of options out here in Hawaii for like PR firms. There's typically Nella Media Group, and I think that's it. Actually, I think
What Hawaii are you in?
I'm in Honolulu.
Okay.
So like, so when I got out, I was looking for PR work, and I did some intern work with Nella Media Group, and then there was one other company that lasted for like probably a year, and then they left out. And then it's like, I remember especially during the social media boom of like 2007, 2008, 2009, when it kind of just made PR in the traditional sense of going to a firm to a certain, from my perspective, it seemed like it kind of affected it, especially if you were trying to go into looking to work for a firm, because social media just blew up, and I feel like that was super unexpected back then.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was, I drifted, and I did retail. I worked for Microsoft for a couple years. When I went to Redmond, Washington, and then came back and did IT, and I've been out of IT for a year, but I wish I had a boss like you, because I've never had a good boss.
Well, I just always wanted to, it's a team mentality, and I just, I'm really grateful for my team. They're very hardworking, they're passionate, and really care about what they do. And, everybody gets busy and runs a million miles per hour, but everybody has lives outside of, video game PR.
Yeah.
And so I try to be mindful of that. Some people have children like myself. I have to make dinner. I have to take my daughter, to school. She does do hybrid school now. So there are like, different things that I try to, you just have to be flexible, basically. And, PR is, one of those things, it's not a 9 to 6 job. There's news that changes. And also I have a lot of clients that are on the West Coast. So I have to be sort of mindful of that as well, because I'm on the East Coast. And so, but I've adapted to it because it's what I signed up for. But what I've been doing more and more, especially with shelter in place, I was traveling, 2 to 3 times a month. I wasn't home, and I was going to the West Coast, or I was visiting clients, or we were doing events, or I was in the city. There was a lot of activity that was going on. There wasn't really a trade show or event that I missed, unless there was like a huge conflict that maybe my daughter was in a play or something like that. But for the most part, and so now I've really committed to I always worked out. That was very important to me, because to me it's a release and a time to sort of take time for myself, which I don't do that often. Because as a mom, a wife, and heading up TBPR, it's my time's always sort of shared. And so that's my only time. So what I've been trying to do is commit to working out at least twice a day. So that doesn't mean that I'm like, committing to 2-hour workouts, but at least like if I can walk maybe in the morning and then I'll weightlift in the afternoon or something like that. And it's just for me to also take a break from sitting in front of the computer a lot. And or I'll walk my dogs, some sort of like outdoor, some sort of activity that gets me moving.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually bought a Peloton that last year for my husband. But I mean, since, and I was going to the gym, but since, being at home, it's been a godsend. It's been like been a lifesaver for us to sort of use. And so that's good, because when the colder months come here, I'm gonna need it.
Do you find it to be like, I know for my wife and I, we used to go to the gym at least, 6 times a week. And then since this whole, the pandemic has happened, it's having to transition to working out at home. And a lot of people are like, oh, it should be easy. I'm like, it's a completely different mindset, because it's like you're home. You're like, there's a couch.
Yeah.
There are my weights. Which one do you want to utilize? Like, have you, has it been difficult for you with adjusting to working out at home, or?
Well, with the Peloton, what I really like is because it's engaging, because it's a video. You're like interacting. I actually haven't done it yet, but I've been talking, Andrea Renee.
Yeah.
I've been talking to her about, we were going to schedule some sort of like video Peloton, because you can do it with a friend. And I thought that would be really fun and probably be more motivating. But the one thing that is really hard to do is doing yoga from home. I like a yoga studio, because it's sort of that's what yoga is about, right? It's like really sort of focusing, while you're there, and sort of being secluded and letting go of all your stress or all your surroundings. I work from home, so if we can do any sort of yoga from here, I'm like, yeah, I need a break. So yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely something, I think taking breaks is really important. That was one of the things that I mentioned to my team too. Even though no one's really going anywhere, or if they're going somewhere, they're renting a house somewhere and just staying in a house, I said, just take the time, like take the week off. Even if you stay at home and you're just playing video games, take the week off, so that you get a mental break, because it is monotonous. I actually stopped watching the news, because I just felt like I'll find my news online when I want to, and I get to control that. And I just feel like, having news come on all the time is kind of not great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel the same way too. My wife and I, we typically will go and look up the news. Either you'll find it on Twitter, or, go to various publications, and you can find it there, just because I'm a big believer, and I think that's also with the Polynesian background. Like, we're very into like, energy, positive, negative energy. And a lot of the news, like, constantly it's something negative. And it just got to a point, I know for us, that we're like, we have to turn it off, because it's like, it's dampening everything around you. It's like changing your perspective of looking at things. Like, you can just look at your phone and be like, okay, that's negative. Look at this light here. Okay, that's negative. And it's like, it's too much. You don't have, like you said, like the control, because it's just boom, 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 boom. It's like, is there any positive news at all? And it's like, no, it's almost not.
Yeah.
So
it was more or less also for my daughter, because she's a teenager, so she understands. It's not like she's little. And so I just wanted to screen sort of the media that she's consuming as well, because I'd rather have a discussion as a family than for her to hear, somebody else's perspective or delivering of, potentially toxic news. So I try to be sort of cautious about that as well.
Yeah. Definitely have to. So, speaking of with your, like, how did you, let's talk about your background. Like, how did you get into PR? Like, is this something you were going, like, especially video game PR, was this something you were going out, like intentionally going into, or like, how did that come about?
I was a hardcore gamer growing up. I played video games like everyone else. And I thought I was just really bad at ET. So I didn't realize, it didn't dawn on me that video games was an actual profession. Until I went for an interview at GT Interactive Software, and GT was a video game publisher. And they actually published the first Oddworld, Warren Lanning, and they worked on Duke Nukem, Unreal, Doom, Quake. So it was a pretty big label. They were in Manhattan, and I actually was interviewing for an accounting position because I liked numbers, and I had, math was always like one of my stronger subjects. So I thought I was going to be an accountant. And then I interviewed with the HR director, and he was like, "You're not an accountant." And I was like, "What?" And then he was like, "No, you're PR." So I was like, "Okay." I had no idea what PR was. I heard of it, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know what, it's so funny because for the longest time, do you ever see that on Twitter when people are like, what is your, tell us what your parents or your family think you do? Like for the longest time, my family's like, "Wait, what do you do again?" And I'm like, "I am the communicator between the outlet and my clients' games," So they're like, and then for a while, every video game, my father would be like, "Oh, you did this too?" I'm like, "Not every video game like that." And no, I'm not a coder. Nope, didn't. So, I was the VP of corporate communications over at GT. And I just really, really, learned everything from there. And oh my God, this is going to date me. But I was faxing press releases into a fax machine, and I was calling to pitch people. So yeah.
I mean, hey, if we go by the standard of IT, they're still using fax. So you're good.
So and it's so funny because you would wait for the response of the fax, to come out and your press release. And I think about it now, and it was like forever. But everything is so much more efficient with email, and I think a lot of media prefer email just because this way they can sift through things that they prefer or they don't prefer in terms of the types of pitches or stories that they're going to write, right? Sometimes it's like saying no on the phone is super awkward. I was always, I know everybody's going to be surprised by this, but I was always really aggressive about it too. Like, but in a nice way, my parents always said that I never liked the word no. And that probably still stands true to today if you ask my husband. But I got that hustle. So I just so I worked at GT, and then worked. I wanted an agency experience. I didn't have it, so I went to Edelman because that's a big agency, and I was like, let me try that. And so then I went to a boutique agency. That's where I found my home for many years. I was very torn. It was very hard for me to leave, but I didn't know. I was such a career-minded person that I honestly did not realize that once I had my daughter, everything was going to change for me. And that's exactly what happened. It changed, and I just wanted to be her mom. And working remotely just started. And so my old agency were like, "We don't want to lose you. So what if we just gave you some work here and there? We understand you can't commit to 40, 50 hours a week, but, and I love them." And so I had little gigs here and there. And then probably the biggest, client that I had that came my way was Disney for Disney Infinity.
Wow.
Yeah. So Disney came to me. They had somebody that left their team that went on maternity leave, and maternity leave there was 6 months. And so they wanted somebody to come into their games group to just be like turnkey, come in and I was working on like Disney Princess, and I was like, this is perfect. My daughter's little, she loves that. And, you know, we went to like screenings for Big Hero 6 and, you know, it was fun, you know? So I did that. And then they brought me on for Fantasia Music Evolved with harmonics.
Wow.
And so I worked with harmonics. I learned a ton just working with Disney and working on that game, and the harmonics team was fantastic, and they're still very good friends of mine as until this day. So that was great. And then the Infinity team scooped me up for a 3.0. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I ended up working with them, and then I got a ton of experience and really, really enjoyed working with them. And then, you know, started working with people like Square Enix. And so that was a big deal for me too. And yeah, I mean, I got to be honest, and somebody came down on me, and I wish I responded, but I sort of was like, I don't want to get involved in a Twitter fight right now. But I talk very positively about loving my job, right? And somebody said something about like, you know, I'm trying to remember the exact word, but it was something like, not all of us get the opportunity to love our job. And I understand that, but this was like almost me just sort of appreciating that I've invested so much time. And here I am 20 plus years later, which is a lot of times where people at my age start reflecting on, should I go into something else? Should I do something else? An entirely different career. Maybe there's that dream that I never pursued as you're getting older. And I really still love my job. So I was more or less reflecting on that and sharing that, you know. There's always that one person that finds negativity in what you're saying. And it was really a positive moment for me. But instead of explaining, I was like, I don't need to explain why I feel that way. So I just sort of left it alone and let that person have their, you know, their moment to feel the way they wanted to. And I sort of left it alone because I don't like engaging in any sort of, you know, debate, especially when it comes to the way I feel personally.
Yeah, because you're talking about your experience and like that for that person. Okay, you know, if granted, they don't enjoy what they're doing. Okay, that's their thing. Like maybe they should go and
try to pursue something else.
You know, it's like, you know, like don't bring a cloud over Tara. She's enjoying herself. Like it's funny. Social media is such a great tool, but sometimes, man, people on social media are interesting.
Definitely. I mean, I've actually been less active on social media. Because for the most part, when I was at events or trade shows, I would be, you know, there with, you know, our industry friends or whatever. And now we're not doing that. So I think I'm less engaging in that way. But I do find little different things that I can, you know, promote here and there that, or talk about, like, and I get proud. Like I know this is going to sound so cheesy, but I still get like excited whenever a game that I'm working on, an announcement trailer. Like I get like I can't even explain it. It's the geek in me, I guess. And like, you know, we were at XO in London last November, and basically, I was working on Grounded with Obsidian, and they premiered their announcement trailer there. And I was just so excited to see it on the big screen like that, and to see everybody's reaction. That's pretty darn cool.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing cheesy about that. That is amazing.
I can get so like geeked out and cheesy about certain things. So
No,
that was definitely a wow moment for me, even I have a million of them, but like, even at that time. So I was just like, wow, this is really cool.
So what are some of your top 3 moments then?
One is I worked on Enter the Matrix.
Wow. And
that was the first time we did a collaboration with Warner Brothers, and we did the green carpet. And Jada Pinkett Smith was one of the main characters, and working on that to that level at a very young age was probably a big moment for me, because it was one of the first times, and that was, I think that led the example for the collaboration and the blurring the lines between film and video games. And I thought that was very cool, to be a part of, to manage, to work with Shiny, the entire experience. I thought that was a really, really cool moment there. I'm trying to think.
Take your time.
I'm trying to think what else there's a ton. Oh, and I actually shared not too long ago, and I'll have to send you a photo of it. I'll find it on my Instagram. But it was the lenticular that we did for the Enter the Matrix invite, because then we would mail invites, and when you move the lenticular, it was all the coding.
Wow.
So that was really cool. So being a part of that was really, really cool. And I mean, I'm trying to think if there was like another event in between. But I would say probably, next to that, my big moment was growing TBPR.
Nice.
Just because there's such a great, like, not only a team, but everybody has different levels of experience, but everybody is like, has the same. That was one of my criteria whenever I interviewed somebody, even though it's a different approach in terms of like having a network. I always wanted to make sure that it's people that are really passionate about doing PR, or passionate about working in PR, or working with the team. And I don't know, I find this team really unique, and I've worked with a lot of different people that I admire and have inspired me all along the way. I would not be here if I didn't have all of those people that inspire me. But I definitely, they inspire me to work harder and do better, because of how passionate and how skilled they are. And it's also, the other thing that was really nice is that, I was an independent contractor for so long. So it was me making these decisions by myself. And it's so nice to be able to like collaborate or bounce ideas off of other people, which I haven't done in a while before. I hadn't done in a while before I started this. So that's another plus, I would say. But those are like my two moments, is probably the Matrix and then DBBR. Totally two different things.
No, but they're both fantastic, and great accomplishments. Not many people can say that they've achieved that, and that's something definitely to be proud of. Like that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like that, and I like the flexibility of being from home. Like I said, like just to be here for my daughter, and my husband and my dogs, who drive me nuts every day. Anybody on my team, whenever like I'm out in the kitchen or something and I'm talking to my team, I'm always like, the dogs are always like at me, and I'm like, I'm like running away with my laptop with, from the dog. Trying to get stuff done,
Yeah.
I just sit there, I'm like, oh. But yeah, so, I also talking about Twitter, just going back, I also look because I watch a lot of different programs and shows, and there's a lot of people that also inspire me. And so I look sometimes to people and things and accomplishments and for inspiration. Because and the other thing is too, I think it's really important as a leader is that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And also it's good to challenge yourself to do new things. So sometimes people come to me with like bizarro PR things that they want. And even though it's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, I'll pull a proposal together because I do want to learn and do different things too. So, sometimes that comes my way too, which is interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things like for me in coming into like the video game industry, in the sense of being a content creator, working with different companies, different brands, different PR companies, is what I've come to learn over the last, I want to say 6 years I've been doing content creation, but the last 2 or 3 years I've been very serious about it. I've come to learn how intricate, PR teams are to everything that goes on in gaming, and how it's a very large industry, but it's very small at the same time.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of content creators that I guess are coming up and, may not understand, and even gamers in general, a lot of gamers may not understand how impactful PR is for the games that they love. Like, it's super, super important. It's super, super very imperative. But from your perspective, like, how, I guess from an insider's perspective, like, how intricate would it be?
What, for PR? It's interesting because I actually have someone on my team who, actually have a couple people who have, now that I'm thinking about it, I have more than a couple who have, I'm like, oh, wait a second, who have journalistic backgrounds. So they talk about how they did not realize how much involved PR is. And now that they see, they have a better understanding of the entire landscape. And PR is one of those things too, is super hot, fast paced, right? One day it might be like you're marching towards this one, key beat. And then it's like, oh, wait, this is going to change. We're going to do this, whatever. And then we have to shift, and plan that. And it could be anything and everything. Like if a big game announces, that they're coming out, the date that you plan to come out, right? But maybe you didn't announce the date yet. You just said fall, right? And then you find out like a big game, you can shift that internally. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that happen. That is a collaboration, but also it's, there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. And there's a lot of planning that goes into it too. So sometimes I get, people that come to me and they have something, they're like, oh, we have this announcement going out in a week or two. Can you come on and write a press release? And I'm like, we do more. It's got to be thoughtful, right? So sometimes I'll turn that down because I don't just come on and write a press release, right? There's strategy involved and there's thought process behind it. So, for a new client, I'm saying. So there's things like that you have to be sort of mindful of, like, okay, what's the goal of this? And you have to think that through and what the strategy is, and then whether you're going to take certain things on or not. But I try to think those things through before I commit. And and I mean, again, I like to work, so I'm working all hours. But it's my own choice, Not everybody. It's not for everybody to be as busy or have that fast pace in mind. But I like being the person, especially when it's something real good that you're working on, to know that, the journalist, like, guess what's happening. You got to hold on to this until, but it's something cool that you've been working on. You're like, I can't wait to tell them,
Yeah.
Sometimes with PR, you got to hang on to secrets for a long time. And you're just like, I want to tell somebody. But, so yeah, it's exciting.
Typically for you, like when it comes to projects that you take on, what are some, like on average, are they usually several years, like 2 or 3 year minimum, or does it wildly vary based on the project that you take on?
Yeah, it's definitely different. Sometimes I do have the luxury of planning ahead, 2 years ahead or so, or 18 months, but sometimes it's not the case. As long as I have a good runway and I have some control over what the engagement is going to be, then, I'm willing to be flexible and work with that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess one of the questions I actually have a couple of questions that because before I do an interview, like I'll let my audience know, like, okay, this is the person I'm going to interview. So I have a couple for my audience that they're curious to know, and a couple of them might center around content creators. Just give you a heads up on that. So one of the questions that I have here is how pivotal are content creators and influencers towards PR for a game? Like, as a PR person, this is a very multifaceted question.
Yeah, go ahead.
But as a PR person, is it critical for you to work with influencers and content creators to promote a product?
So I would say that it's not critical, but I like to partner with certain influencers and content creators, especially those that are super passionate about a project that I'm working on and they want to play our game. I'm definitely open to that. And so we actually have a process where a lot of people will submit interest for a game. And then we distribute codes at that, at the time of launch, so that they can play the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then other question I have, this one's actually from my wife. Lihua asks, what are the top 5 common mistakes that you see that content creators do when it comes to reaching out either to a PR team or to a company to work with them?
I would say copy and paste. So they just there's no real care in the email they're sending to you. And so then it's like, why should we pay attention to this if you didn't take the time to really think about what you're asking for here? And I would say probably the other thing is that just sending a simple email, like, I'd like a code for your game, but there's no real context to it. Like what you plan on doing with that code, sharing a link, because usually we'll follow up with like, can you share a link? So just, past engagements that you had. I would probably say DMing, because there's a process and it's hard to track DMs. Email's best, I would say. DM to start there, sure, if you want to have an engagement, but then let's transfer it over to email, because I think that helps everybody keep organized. I think because we use so many different platforms for communication between DM and Slack and, Facebook Messenger, sometimes people still send me messages on. And
really?
Yes.
What?
I get Facebook Messenger and I'm like, wait, what? What's this? This? Oh, wait, I have to open 17 apps to get to, forget it, Yeah. And, just being thoughtful, I would say, just being thoughtful in your email and why you would want to play the game and stream the game, and then also just like, please, 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 please do not break embargo. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So when it comes to breaking embargo, this is something like I see it so often, and I don't understand, aside from maybe a couple extra clicks and some traffic, in the long run, what good does that do to other creators when they do that? Because I've seen as many games I've worked with, I've worked with Square Enix, Bandai Namco, and many others when it comes to games, and they're like, this is a deadline, this is the time, and the time, what is it, the time zone for when this can go live. You can put out certain things and don't go beyond that. And I see it time and time again. Creators are just like, oh, we're, here it is. This is my thoughts. This, we're gonna break embargo, especially with Final Fantasy VII Remake. I got to work with Square. That was the first time I got to work with Square Enix.
Okay.
And there were so many influences I personally knew that just broke embargo, and I'm over here like, what are you doing? Because to me, it's like you're affecting everyone else and companies' willingness to even want to work with influencers or content creators again. And it's like, it's a very selfish thing. And I've never understood the logic of it.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that are going on. When it's a media outlet that breaks embargo, I think sometimes they accidentally, because they have embargoed information that they already have in the queue. Mm-hmm. And it's only happened a few times with big outlets, and they quickly apologize and remove it. But sometimes it's maybe they passed the buck and said, oh, publish this at whatever to somebody, and it's a press of a button or something like that they accidentally did. That to me, while it's not great, I try to be understandable, especially if it's somebody that I know really, really well, and I know genuinely did not deliberately do that, right? They didn't deliberately aim to do that, and they feel terrible about it. But I think with influencers, I think the one thing that me and my team are really good at is that we partner with people that are respectful and mindful of our embargoes and has treated it as such. Some people, there's so many that come through our door. I'm going to sound like on the other end of the spectrum where I know journalists are like, I get pitched by hundreds of emails. Like that's what happens on our end. We get a lot of people that express interest, which is awesome. But we do have to, number one, we only get a limited set of keys. So it's not like Christmas, right? Or like Oprah with a car, you get a car, it's not like that. We definitely need to be mindful of how many keys we can distribute. So if it's obviously better if we already have a pre-existing relationship with you. But we're pretty open, especially if somebody has a history of like they stream often, you see their channel is active, and then you want to. So I will say it's happened a few times to me as well, but I think we have some good relationships, but we also set some good parameters. And then the other content creators, unfortunately, they don't get the codes in advance. They get them day of or after that, just because until we have that relationship with them and we know for sure that embargo won't break, we have a policy. And, we need to always adhere to that policy. So, but I think we're fair. I honestly think my team is very, very fair in how we, provide codes. And again, depends on how many codes we get for a game. Because if we have limited codes, we need to be limited in terms of how we distribute it. But again, if you have a history and a relationship with us, I think, then we're more willing to send it in advance. And sometimes we don't get codes until closer to launch. So it just, it depends, everybody's different. So we just sort of handle it on a case by case basis.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of the things, like, I hope, the audience, you guys realize, like, especially when it comes to codes, like, that's always a variable. And that can even be platform specific, too, because I know, like, with, I was working with Evolve PR with, Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. And I remember I requested a code for Xbox One, because I've noticed, like, when a lot of games come out, it's typically people ask for PC or PS4 or Switch first. And So I'm like, okay, so the angle I try to go at is, let me cover how this works on the Xbox, just so I can have some way of like differentiating myself from everyone else. Like, hey, I reviewed this game on the Xbox One, and I got it on the Xbox One S and One X, and this is the performance difference. It's like, that's one of the things I go for. And when I requested that game, they're like, hey, we didn't get codes for it, but would you like to request it for another platform? We can go ahead and just push it through. Because, again, for the audience who may not know, sometimes with certain platforms, you may not get that in time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's, and that's the other thing too, with if you're an influencer or a content creator and you get a code, treat that with the utmost respect. Like, if I get codes, okay, so like, I'm typically reviewing 7 to 15 games a week. It's funny. People are like, oh, you're just playing video games. No, I'm working.
Yeah.
So it's like, when I get a code, I treat it like, okay, so I'll put it in my Outlook calendar. Like, okay, this is due here. These are the points I want to hit. I'll also reach out to the company. Like, is there anything you want me to specifically highlight? And it's not so that, I'm asking them to, or I'm asking if they want me to like just promote a certain thing. But like, if there's a certain feature that's you're touting and you want me to promote that, okay, I'll talk about that. I don't have an issue with that. I'm very much, I love working with the industry, because for me, it's a privilege. I growing up, I never thought I could be able to work with gaming companies. I thought reading GamePro magazine and EGM magazine was like the closest I would ever get. And it's crazy when my parents are like, what do you do again? You review video games? You just play games all day? Yeah. That's
but I think with anything, with content creators, clients, media outlets, publications, online sites, everyone, it's a partnership.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a business.
Yeah.
You have to treat it as such, right? There's mutual respect. So, that's sort of where you need to come out with the professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is is really, really important when you're working with somebody in PR.
Yeah, definitely. And also, it's a very small industry. People know each other. Just know that. So if you're doing the copy and paste, I'm sure someone else has seen that same copy and paste too. So
yeah, and I'll say that because I've been in the industry for a long time, a lot of people ask me, do you know so-and-so? If they're interviewing them or whatever, that happens a lot. Have you worked with this person? You're saying the industry is small. It's true. I can't even tell you how many times it's come back around again. And I'm like, yeah, I used to work with that person, 5 years ago at whatever, so, that's the other thing. It's funny. It's like, everybody sort of knows each other now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's just one of those things like I work with other content creators who will ask me like, oh, how do I reach out to this person? How do I reach out to them? And I'm like, well, the best way is just to reach out and let it be something organic. It's heartfelt, like show your passion, because your passion will shine through. If you genuinely want to work with a company, you can work your way there. Like, you may not get a review code or a review copy or a review product immediately, but work towards it. I very strongly emphasize, both to my audience and to other content creators I know that are coming up, like, work with what you have, build a body of work.
Yeah.
That way you have something to reference to. For me, I've got my YouTube channel. I've got my website. I've got, my podcast. Like, this is my body of work. So when I go to someone like, hey, I'd like to work with you, here's examples of what I've done. It's a portfolio. And I think in many ways, I wish that business aspect of mentality was more common with a lot of the content creators that are coming up. But eventually, everyone has their own way of getting through and navigating.
Yeah, I just think I think at least what I can attest about you is that you were you did your research, and so when you reached out to me and we were working on a few projects that I was working on and doing interviews, that you had the utmost professionalism, And, you provided like, oh, you don't know who I am. Here's who I am. Here's links and everything. So, that's probably the hardest part, is that somebody might be interested, and then if they don't provide links, just because we're so busy, we might put it aside for a second because we need to have time to do that search, like that Google search or whatever on YouTube, or, sort of dig for that a little bit. So I want to say thank you. I really appreciated that about you.
Yeah, thank you. Being respectful of time, I've got one final question for you. Because I know you're very busy, and I really want to be respectful of your time.
No, I'm so glad we made this happen. This makes me so happy.
So as far as like conventions, how I guess with the lack of physical conventions, with the lack of E3 and a physical Tokyo Game Show and everything that's going on with, lack of PAX right now, how impactful would you say that is to the gaming industry and the PR agencies that work alongside the gaming industry?
Well, I think there's nothing like, having physical contact, in-person conversations. Like, you can't replace that.
Yeah.
No Zoom call, Discord, Google Hangout, everything. You throw it all out in one thing. It's not the same at all. I mean, a lot of my connections and my conversations and things would happen organically over a cocktail, a dinner, a coffee, or whatever. Let's meet and walk to the convention together, whatever it was. You can't replace that. However, in terms of events, yeah, we've all pivoted digitally. We've seen that, right? Everybody's been able to have their, events, and been able to showcase their products and their consoles. I mean, we saw it with Microsoft and Sony, and a lot of my clients, we've pivoted digitally, and we will continue to do so as long as we're doing this, because we do have a job to do, and we do have a message to send out, and we do have games that we're working on. So that doesn't stop. However, it doesn't replace the in-person. So I am looking forward very much to the day that we can go back to, I'm thinking about New York Comic Con I'd be prepping for right now, and being in the city and seeing a lot of my industry friends. Or, I always treated, well, not always, in the past couple of years, because we're only 3 years old, but I treated my team for the past couple of years to, the Game Awards. And I'm not going to be doing that this year. So those are the things that I always look forward to, in terms of outside of just having the event itself for the purpose of having the event. It's the socializing and being with your friends and having those conversations and real talk that you're not having right now. It's very, very isolating. And listen, we could set up all the Zoom calls in the world. It still doesn't replace that, in-person connection that you get from when you have those conversations, Yeah.
No, I agree fully. I was talking to my friend Andrew Rayner from Game Informer about this recently, and it's definitely one of those situations where it's like, you'll have the people, they'll say like, oh, I can just watch Game Awards, or I can watch E3 on YouTube, and it's the same thing. And it's like, no, until you've actually been to these events, it is worlds apart from each other. Like, watching it and physically being there are so different. And I miss it. Like, last year was my first E3. I got sent out there. My wife and I got sent there by PDP, and that was truly an amazing experience we were not ready for, because we were told like, yeah, just get a hotel by the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spend an hour and a half each day in traffic.
Nobody warned me for that until like we got to the convention, and people were like, oh, did you get your Airbnb in the area? And I was like, oh no, we got our hotel at by the airport. And everyone would look at us like, Are you serious? I was
Well,
like,
that was like a lot of places, they couldn't get the hotels near the convention center because, right, they'd be like, they'd be blocked out, and the ESA would have, the housing all sort of blocked. And so there was times where my client was like, well, we can put you out in Beverly Hills. And I was like, I'll figure it out. So, yeah. So there was a lot of times that I just I stayed in like a whatever hotel. Wasn't even great. I remember one hotel I stayed in like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. It was like, I went to go turn the knob for the hot water and the knob came off in my hand. And I was like, this is awesome. Sure. Whatever, I guess. And I had somewhere to be. So I'm literally I called the hotel. They're like, we'll send maintenance up. It's like 7 a.m. That's like the last thing I want to be dealing with. So I had to ask somebody to they ended up having an extra room, an E3 that's unheard of. And they moved me there. And then I was able to shower. But I was just like, oh God, what's happening? What do I have to do? Who am I going to call to bust up into their room so I can take a shower before this thing? But yeah, it's nuts. Yeah. But E3, it's and then I sponsored DICE this year with Killian, who's a colleague of mine, and Stephanie Shop of Tinsley PR. Yeah, so the three of us, we sponsored DICE this year. That was super fun. It's the first time I ever did that, and like I said, there's I don't know everything, so I always try certain ways and stuff. But it was I just launched my website. And so it was a good way to get the word out there, which is why I also sponsored. So, but I also love what Megan does with DICE. And I really love that event. It's just very personal, and I really like that event very much.
Okay, definitely.
I just who doesn't have fun in Vegas?
So here, fingers crossed next year we get the opportunity to go to events again. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
So is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we go today?
I miss everyone. I miss people. This is very hard for a people person. So I'm Latin, and a lot of Latin people are are people. So we're big huggers, we're big kissers, So it's
I understand. I'm Dominican. I understand. I understand.
So yeah, it's right, you're always hugging and moving and whatever, and now I'm not going to be doing that, because even after this, whenever it is that we go out in events, I'm going to be doing the fist bump.
Right? Or you'd be like,
sanitizing. But I do. I'm so many people would be taken aback because I'd see them and then I'd be hugging them, don't well, but that's how I am. I'm very much hugging all the time. And now I'm going to be but it's funny because I was at PAX this year and it was right when they were talking about, COVID, and I was and I was hearing on the news, but everybody was at PAX East. And, I remember my developer was like, oh, do you want to, try the game? I was like, I'm not touching a controller. After I'm hearing all the news, and I'm glad I didn't, but I brought a lot of hand sanitizer. So we were always, every 5 minutes and wiping down the controller, making sure, whatever. Oh man. Do you remember when we just go somewhere and nobody cared about this stuff?
I know. I really feel like this is good. The dynamic of how we're going to interact as humans going forward is just going to be so different. It's crazy. When I go to the store, before I just never really thought of it. Just wipe down the grocery cart, walk in, grab your stuff. Now I'm over here. If I see someone coughing, I'm like,
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I only go to like 2 places when I'm home. But we do have outdoor dining, which I've done a few times. But the thing is that, my heart really goes out to the people that lost someone,
Yeah.
To COVID, because I mean, that's unimaginable, and as you know, I lost my dad earlier this year, and that was hard because, you weren't, he was in the hospital you weren't allowed to go and do what you would. And so, it's just a really hard year for a lot of people. So I hope and I know that we'll get through this. It's just the getting through part that's going to be hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. This has been a very mentally, emotionally, physically draining year that I don't think any of us could have really. Well, I say us, as in us they're dealing with.
Everyone, right?
Yeah, like it was just, it's unforeseen. About a week ago, found out one of my friends actually passed away from COVID. And a couple months ago, one of my friend's mothers passed away too. And then it's just a part where you can't be there because of the social contact limitations. Like, that's the part that's just I know. We actually, it's something that we're all sort of going through together, but everyone in, industry friends, peers, everyone knows this, that my phone is always open for people. And, I started this thing and I stopped, and I should continue it up again. But when this all hit, I would text or call someone I don't normally every single day in my phone. And I was going down by the alphabet just to check in on them, just to see how they were, just to see how they were handling things and everything like that. And sometimes just hearing my Jersey accent just makes them laugh. So, and it's like an uplifting thing, but so I'm trying to, continue the positivity, which is why I started those care packages with my team, just to be something more uplifting and mindful, and just know that everybody, and it's okay, everybody goes or deals with stress and things that are happening that's, impacting everyone differently. And you just have to be understanding of that, I don't know why, but as much as it's hard not being social, because I'm a social person, so this is hard for me. I've learned to find different things to replace that. And that's spending more time with my family that I didn't have before because I was always on the road. Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the silver lining in all of it.
Yeah. And that's very similar for myself. Like with, my wife and I, like we been married for years, and until this whole situation happened, we've never spent this much time together. Because usually, when she was working her job, I was asleep, and then we rarely ever crossed. And in the last year, I've been doing this full-time podcasting, content creating for a year fully. But before that, I was doing IT, working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week, and 8 hours on the 7th day. So we rarely ever saw each other. And then this whole thing happened, and then with me working from home, and now she's actually transitioned over to being a full-time content creator as well.
Oh, okay.
And it's allowed us, we spend so much time together, and then we're now expecting our first child.
Oh,
which is,
I didn't know that. When?
March 22nd is our date. So
boy or girl?
We don't know. We're gonna find out, I think, next month, or maybe November. Oh wait, no. Is it October? No, it's September. Next month we'll find out. October.
Okay.
We'll find out. So it's yeah.
Well, you're blessed. So this is actually a good year for you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, with that being said, I actually do have one final question, and that question is, did you have fun?
I had a great time. I really did. I'm sorry I waited so long to do this.
No. And, we definitely need to have you back on the show again. I know you're very busy, so we will schedule it in. I'll have my people talk to your people, which is just you and I talking to each other.
Basically means that you're just going to DM me.
Yeah. And with that being said, I'll leave links to all your social media outlets, your website as well. And anything else? Is there anything you want to plug before we go, or?
No. I just hope everybody continues to be well and safe, and and close out the year as best we can.
Yeah. And with that being said, people, this is wrapping up another episode of the Kasanova Podcast. You can catch it on multiple outlets. If you're watching it, it's all down here. But we recently just got on Amazon Music. Amazon reached out to us to get the show on there. So we're on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, couple other places too for audio listening. If you're watching it, it's typically either going to be on YouTube or on Twitch, so you can catch it on those two outlets as well. And number one podcast in Hawaii and in the Pacific. And with that being said, Tara and I are signing out. You guys have a good one.
Bye.
Hey, did you enjoy this episode of the Kasanova Podcast? Well, I'm sure you did. And since you did, and you're wondering where else you can find it, you can find it on every podcasting outlet. Yes, that includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Launchpad DM by Podcast One, and so much more. And the only thing I ask of you is if you truly enjoyed it, even if you didn't enjoy it, please leave a rating and tell us what you thought of it, what you like, what you didn't like, and everything in between. And also, if you're looking for video formats of this podcast and many more, you'll be able to find them on youtube.com/Mekel Kasanova, as well as on twitch.tv/Mekel Kasanova, and new episodes every single Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, with that being said, this is Mekel Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber. I am signing out. You guys have a great one.